Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. That's audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health, and really without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. That's betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
So Star Trek decided to make a kids show, except it's not quite a kids show, and it's animated. Wait a minute. Didn't they do this in 1976?
I have no idea. Welcome to episode 180 of Nerdery and Murdery.
Big 180. I'm Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your Murdery. Welcome to another week of the highs and lows, the ups and downs, the good and the bad, the nerd and the murd. So, let's take the pod back machine back into the 90s.
Okay, we're going back to the 90s.
Zig and I worked for Little Caesars. Little Caesars, I think, is pretty good. They were always pretty good. And we got to go through some of their tester stuff and everything, but right now they have these things called I think they're called Crazy Puffs. Yeah. I think that's what they're called. Have you tried these?
Yes. I can't eat much of them because I can't really do yeasty bread anymore. But
yeah,
they're really kind of tasty.
They're little bombs of goodness.
Uh-huh.
I've enjoyed it. We've had it twice in 2 weeks' time. I had it just last night.
I still say the best thing they ever made was that bacon BLT.
BLT, yeah. It had the salad dressing base. You know, when I say salad dressing, I'm talking like Miracle Whip, but it wasn't Miracle Whip. Yeah. But that type of dressing as a base, and you put that and the cheese through the oven. Then when it came, and the bacon, And then when it came out, you put lettuce and tomato on top of it, and that was really, really good. I was surprised that didn't last.
Yeah, and then drizzle that sauce on top of it too.
Yeah, it
Ooh,
was
that was
so
good.
good. It was so good. But yeah, the Little Caesars Crazy Puffs, give those a whirl if you haven't yet. They're not expensive. $3.99 for four of them.
Yeah,
You know,
which is lunch.
yeah. Oh yeah. Get that little dipping sauce to go with it. And I don't
Hmm.
I don't understand why they send the dipping sauce cold though. That's a little weird. I always heat it up when I get home. But anyway, we just had that last night. Give those a shot. Um, in the past, I've watched it several times. I've watched the entire series of Oz.
Hmm.
Oz is a show about a maximum security prison.
Yeah.
The 99% of the episode is entirely in the prison. There's a little bit outside of it, but um, Oz is enough to scare you straight.
Hmm.
Mayor of Kingstown. Have you seen this?
No, I didn't really care for Oz. No, I did like Orange is the New Black.
Which was really good. Yes,
Yeah.
Orange is the New Black was really good.
But yeah, the premise was just like it's kind of wild. Although it's got Jeremy Renner in it, and I love Jeremy Renner.
Yes, yes. So the Mayor of Kingstown is done by Taylor Sheridan, who did Yellowstone. Um, we started watching it, and it's about a town, Kingstown, and he's the mayor of it, which he's not the real mayor. This is just a title. He's a liaison between prisoners and the town because this town is surrounded by like 10 prisons
Like Huntsville.
within 10 miles.
Yeah, like Huntsville. And the town of Huntsville loves the fact that they've got uh prisons around them. And it's like, why? It's like you have no idea. We get all kinds of money from it. All
Well,
kinds.
Kingstown may get that, but Kingstown is also very rough. It's very crime ridden. It's very, very crime ridden. It's in Michigan. Um, but anyway, we've been watching it and it's really good. Jeremy Renner is great in it. But Mayor of Kingstown scares me even more than Oz did of prisons.
Wow.
You don't spend a whole lot of time in the prisons. You spend some. Most of it is out in Kingstown with Jeremy Renner and the things he's doing as the liaison. Um, but it's just the stuff that happens inside the prison is just truly frightening. And I just don't see how anybody couldn't could watch this show and ever think they would survive in a prison. It's just
Hmm.
awful, awful, terrible. Mayor of Kingstown, big marks. Highly recommend it. Highly
Okay.
recommend it. 3 seasons. We've made it through season one, and are just about to start into two. Highly, highly recommend. So that is all I have. You got anything for us? Are you ready to kick off onto the nerdery side of the house?
I'm kind of ready to talk about Star Trek Prodigy.
All right, kick it off.
Okay. So this is another one in our Star Trek series, Star Trek Prodigy. It's an American animated science fiction television series created by Kevin and Dan Hageman, and it's the 10th Star Trek series and debuted in 2021 as part of the executive producer Alec Kurtzman's expanded Star Trek universe. Prodigy is the first Star Trek series to specifically target a younger audience in the franchise's first solely 3D animated series. It follows a group of young aliens in the 24th century who find the abandoned starship Protostar and learn about Starfleet. Brett Gray, Ella Purnell, Jason Mantzoukas, Angus Emery, Riley Alzariki, and D. Bradley Baker voice the young crew of the Protostar.
Go back real quick. Purnell. Who did you say?
Hmm?
Purnell. You said the name Purnell. What was the name?
Ella Purnell.
From Fallout?
Oh, oh
Is
yeah,
that her?
yeah, that's her.
Okay.
Um, you also get Kate Mulgrew, Robert Beltran, Robert Picardo, Jamila Jamil, and Will Wheaton also providing voices for the series. Kurtzman first mentioned a youth-focused animated series in January of 2019, and it was confirmed a month later. The Hageman brothers were set as creators and showrunners, and Nickelodeon ordered 2 seasons of Prodigy because they were going to be released on cable after streaming on Paramount Plus. First, Ben Hibben was announced as director and creative lead in August of 2020. The series was produced by CBS Animation Productions and Nickelodeon Animation Studios in association with Secret Hideout, Roddenberry Entertainment, and Brothers Hageman Productions. Star Trek Prodigy premiered on Paramount Plus on October 28th, 2021, and began airing on Nickelodeon on December 17th. The first season of 20 episodes ended in December of 2022. It received positive reviews from critics and won a Children's Family Emmy Award. I can say this uncategorically after watching this. Netflix has picked it up as well, so you can't see it on Netflix if you don't have Paramount. This is a young, I want to say young adult show. It's not necessarily for small children. And much like the Star Trek animated series from the 70s, it doesn't try to talk down to anybody. You know, it's still a pretty hardcore sci-fi show. Having said that, this is more oriented towards a younger audience than.
Can you tell where in the timeline this takes place?
Yes. 2383, 5 years after the U.S. Voyager returned to Earth, and at the end of Star Trek Voyager.
Thank you.
Yeah. So in the second season, they join Admiral Janeway as warrant officers aboard the USS Voyager A on a mission to find the original crew of the Protostar. So what happened was Chakotay took this new ship out based on plans on transwarp, which allowed Voyager to get home. They built this new ship. It took them about 5 years. Chakotay's the captain, and he takes it and heads back to the Delta Quadrant. Something happens. You're not 100% sure what, but the ship basically gets stuck inside this cavern on a planet that's being mined by this bad guy. We'll call him a bad guy, who uses young people as slave labor to mine, because they're mining other stuff besides just trying to get the ship out, because it's like buried in the rock. These slaves don't really so much do a revolt as jump in the ship and try to escape. So there's a group of them, and they're all different aliens from the Delta Quadrant. Some we've never seen before. And they are running. There's also a oh my God, the pig people from Star Trek.
The pig people. Dadgummit.
Yeah,
You're not talking
Tellarites.
Okay.
There's also a young Tellarite. Nobody's really sure how he got there. But yeah, there's a Tellarite as well as a bunch of aliens from, and when they board the ship and take off, a hologrammatic Janeway pops up, but she's not a captain. She is an instructor. Like, this ship was originally a vessel for training cadets. So basically, the Janeway starts training these guys, which is why you get other holograms from Voyager and other Star Treks popping up. The USS Protostar is in the Tars Lamora prison colony. Taking control of the ship, these freedom fighters learn to work together as they make their way from the Delta Quadrant to the Alpha Quadrant. In the second season, they join Admiral Catherine Janeway as warrant officers aboard the USS Voyager A on a mission to find out what happened to the crew of the Protostar. So this started in June of 2018. After becoming sole showrunner for the series Star Trek Discovery, Alex Kurtzman signed a 5-year overall deal with CBS Television Studios to expand the Star Trek franchise. He wanted to do an adult animated comedy, which is Lower Decks we've spoken about. But he also wanted to do a kid's show, which is where this came about. The idea, and they still haven't quite got there yet, is for us to have Star Trek all year long. As new shows retire, or as old shows retire, new shows come up and take their place. And we're supposed to have it all year long. They're still in pre-production. This show is still running. They're still in pre-production for 3 other shows right now. You've got Section 31, which is coming out. The show about the Academy, which takes place in the same time period as
Thought
Discovery.
Academy. Oh, does it?
Yeah.
I thought Academy was going to take place during Sulu's time
No,
period.
it's during Discovery. Well, I think so. Maybe I have to go back and reread that.
Okay.
But
And Section 31, for those who don't know, that is the spy arm of Starfleet.
Yes.
They're
Yes.
the secret arm of Starfleet.
Yes, who do things that are very un-Starfleet-like.
Yes.
And I don't remember what the third one is.
Wasn't there? So it's either Klingon
Uh-huh.
or there was rumor that they're going to do one centered around Seven of Nine.
Oh yeah, 709. That's it. 709's getting her own show. About being in command of
The Titans.
Was it the Titan or the Enterprise?
Oh, that's right, because they commissioned a new Enterprise. Yes.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
The Enterprise F, I believe. Is that what we're up to?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and 709 is now commander of that ship, and it's
Yes.
about, we're getting the Enterprise back for Star Trek.
Yeah.
Because Disco is gone, Discovery's gone, Picard is gone. Lower Decks is ending its run. It's in it right now, but it's ending its run. So they want to have a whole slate of different shows going on that are Star Trek. So we got Star Trek all year round.
Mm-hmm.
But we had a pandemic, and then there was a writer strike, and
Right.
then there was an actor strike.
Right. Well, and Strange New Worlds is still going on right now.
Yes, Strange New Worlds is of the last slate that we had starting in 2018. Strange New Worlds is the only one that's still going. Well,
Yeah.
again, Lower Decks is finishing up.
Yeah.
But yeah, the idea is to have those in production all the time, as well as this show. Prodigy is still going to continue, at least for another couple of seasons. Or that's the idea. Rod Roddenberry, who basically started Roddenberry Entertainment as part of this conglomeration, is also there with his father and mother's notes, and trying to keep the idea of Star Trek alive and getting it out to the world. He's more of a Star Trek ambassador, but he is involved in some of these things because he knows the ideas.
Mm-hmm.
He knows what's supposed to be there. Even though, and again, I would say that Gene Roddenberry coming back kind of hurt Next Gen. It wasn't so much Gene Roddenberry as it was his lawyer, because Gene Roddenberry was very, very sick. And he was feeding information through his lawyer, who was being a tyrant on set. But Rod Roddenberry is very much in the vein, because he of keeping Star Trek alive and running and being an advocate for Star Trek and its ideas, which is odd because Rod for a long time hated Star Trek because it took his dad away from him. And his dad was off doing press junkets or trying to get a new show made, which he did several times and didn't get it done, or he's working on a movie, or he was fighting litigation because of the things that they've done with Star Trek. Rod hated it. But now that his, hindsight's 2020, and his father passed away 30, 40 years ago almost. And then the loss of his mother a few years ago. She kind of helped him before she passed into understanding why Star Trek was important. She knew that Star Trek was so important, she went in and recorded every human sound in different emotional tones so they can use it to piece her voice together for the computers on Federation starships, because she is the voice of Federation computers.
Right. In
perpetuity, they will be able to create anything they need to create from that database of sounds. She basically just gave every human syllable she could. I think they said even including some click sounds, for some like Khoi and San languages, which aren't really spoken in any other part of the world. But they are human sounds, and sometimes you may need to pronounce something like hosa, which you're supposed to click your throat when you say that. You don't just say hosa. When you say hosa, you sound like a redneck, but I sound like a redneck anyways. But anyway, so the idea with this show, it was going to center around these teenagers trying to get away from this horrible person who has enslaved them and made them basically break rock, even though they're children. In April of 2019, the Hageman brothers were confirmed to be writing and executive producing the series alongside Kurtzman, Secret Hideout's Heather Cadden, Rod Roddenberry, of course, that we mentioned, and Trevor Roth of Roddenberry Entertainment, and CBS television animation executive Katie Krentz were all signed on board. In October of that year, 2019, Nickelodeon ordered 2 seasons of the series. And they also hired in some of the Star Trek people to make sure it didn't play it down. It was like, yeah, because even though children may not understand a lot of the concepts, you don't want to talk to them like they're idiots. You know, you you want a vehicle where you can teach children about the ideas of Starfleet without talking to them like they're morons. And this show, this premise, is exactly the way to do that. Because they're young aliens. They know about Voyager, they know about the Federation, but they don't understand what that means until they get onto the protostar, which does have a way of warping them back home. The second season was concerned with finding out about what happened to the crew of the protostar. I have not gotten up to the third season yet. I'm a bad man. But I also kind of wanted to wait until it was done.
I'm that way with shows all the time. I don't like having to get to the end of one and like, oh my God, I got to wait for them to finish the season. I mean, I'm doing that with Only Murders in the Building. Actually, I need to get into Only Murders in the Building season 4 because I think season 4 is now finished. So, same thing when The Rookie came back. We gave it the full season before we dived back into it.
Yeah, we're
That's
not supposed
just
to get new rookie until 2025
Yeah, I think so. I
early
think so.
2025.
And that should be a longer season. This last season was shortened due to the strike. So
2 strikes. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I love the way it opened with Cop Cuties. I love that song. You did watch it, right? You watched the whole season?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But it was a wedding present,
Yeah.
even though he hated it.
Right.
But yeah, this idea of Voyager, it takes place in the 2380s, 2383 roughly. After Voyager got home, Janeway was made an admiral because of basically time spent and the fact she figured out how to get back and forth through long distances, which is very important. You don't just have to use the Bajoran wormhole, which Starfleet doesn't own. They're trying, but it still belongs to Bajor. So she's made an admiral. She's like, we want to do a training mission because we can get them into the Delta Quadrant and make them learn. They can learn things. The Borg are no longer really a threat anymore. They keep bringing it back, but honestly, Voyager killed the Borg. Yay, Voyager.
Well, they did, but the Borg resurface again in Picard. So
Yeah. Yeah. Although I think they're a Borg from a different universe, which is weird.
maybe.
Yeah. But yeah. So, they're able to go back and do training missions into the Delta Quadrant, as well as explore the places they weren't able to explore because they were worried about getting home. So Chakotay's taking this team of recruits and they lose contact. So these young guys pick up the ship. They're talking to the fake Janeway, The real Janeway has no idea this is going on until they contact her uh, toward the end of the first season. Um, she has no idea that she is mentoring a group of people. Robert Picardo also reprises his role as the holographic doctor, which I love. He's also talking about doing some more stuff as well. Um, around that doctor. Like I think he's going to be in the Section 31. I can't remember if it's Section 31 or the Starfleet one, which takes place hundreds of years later. Um, but either way, I would like to see some of that because I loved Robert Picardo
I did too.
in Voyager. And again, Voyager is my least favorite Star Trek. It's still Star Trek, it's still pretty good. But I thought the writing was weak. I think
It started off weak. I think it got stronger as the seasons went on.
but yeah, this is very Voyager centric, this series. But it makes sense. They're in the Delta Quadrant for the first season. They have Janeway on board, and in the second one, they're on board the Voyager or the remade Voyager, Voyager A. Um, Again, I haven't seen the third season yet, even though I think it's already out. But yeah, I wanted to wait until that was completely done so I could sit down and basically just binge the hell out of it. Um, but yeah, I think especially for younger people, this is a good entry into Star Trek. I think it's a great place to start. If you have nothing about it, this is a good place to start.
You don't think
Uh,
there's going to be too much from Voyager for them to
not the
understand?
way, not the way they put this,
Okay.
because you're all wrapped up in these young people, and their escape, and it's just like, oh yeah, Voyager was a ship from across the galaxy, and Janeway was the captain, and she comes up and says, "Actually, I'm an instructor now. I'm just a hologram of the captain. I'm here to help a crew of cadets, and since you guys are young people, I'm just going to make you cadets. How's that?" And you know, because they can't run the ship unless she's involved because they don't know anything about it. Plus, security lockout, stuff like that. They have to work with her and they have to basically take on the guise of being cadets. Um, but in truth, they really kind of want to be cadets. They don't want to be prisoners anymore. They don't want to be slaves. Um, no, and then you just kind of jump off from there. Um, I would introduce this is a good way to introduce teenagers to Star Trek.
Hmm.
Um, we had the benefit of growing up with the old series on every day in our local markets, and most people did. So you could just jump in at any point because it was a Monster of the Week show and watch what was going on and kind of get the idea. And then you get Next Gen, which was a little less Monster of the Week, and then you get Voyager and Deep Space Nine. That stuff's pretty heavy. You kind of really needed to know about Star Trek before you jumped into that stuff. You could figure it out, but no, I think if you got a young person, they want to figure out Star Trek, have them watch this because they're only half-hour episodes, and there's not that many of them. So yeah, I can highly recommend it. It's beautifully done. Again, it is from the perspective of young people, so it is young people-ish. It's for younger folks. That's not to say a Star Trek fan can't enjoy it. But yeah, that's about it for Prodigy.
Cool. Awesome. We'll give Prodigy a watch. Let us know what you think about that. This is another in our long line of Star Trek series going chronologically. What's next? Is Picard next? What's
Yes, I think so.
next?
Yeah, I think Picard is next.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
Cool.
No, wait. Have we done Picard already?
If we did, we're kind of out of order, aren't we? Because
No,
Picard takes place way after Voyager.
no,
We need to.
no. Hold on.
No, no, yes, no, no.
Yes, no, no, no. I thought we had already done Picard.
Well, like
We
I
just
said,
did
if
Lower Decks was the last one we did.
yeah, yeah, Picard takes should take place after this. I mean, if we've done Picard, we did it out of order, so we should be doing Picard. Um, and then that's really kind of the end
Yeah,
of
until
our
the new
line.
stuff comes out.
So,
We haven't done Strange New Worlds yet.
oh, we should have done that much earlier.
No, no, we're doing it in release date.
Well, then maybe we have done Picard.
We did do Picard.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, I'm sorry. We're doing Star Wars in chronological order.
Yes, we were
That's
doing Star
there,
Wars in chronological order and Star Trek
and
in
Doctor
release
Who in
date.
chronological order. Okay, I got confused on that.
Yeah,
Okay,
when I started doing Star Trek, I didn't think of it that way. I thought, oh, we should do it as they were released.
gotcha.
That's on me.
Well,
And then we
well,
started the other ones in chronological order.
well, and actually, then I say then we're at the end. We're not really at the end because we got to get into movies.
Yes. Yes, we haven't even touched the movies
We
yet.
got to get into the movies. So
Yeah.
awesome. Appreciate that. Give Prodigy a watch. See what you think about it. Let us know. With that, I will take over onto the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For today, I got my information off Wikipedia, Medium, Dark Down East, and Oxygen. And this is the story of Daniel LaPlante.
Daniel LaPlante.
This is a disturbing young man.
Ouch.
Um, so Daniel LaPlante was born on May 15th, 1970 in Townsend, Massachusetts. Growing up on a house on Elm Street. Yes, I did see the irony that he's on Elm Street.
Yes.
Where he allegedly endured horrific sexual and psychological abuse at the hand of his father, and then during his teenage years, at the hands of his psychiatrist.
Oh. Oh
Allegedly,
man.
allegedly,
Allegedly.
allegedly. LaPlante lived with his mother, stepfather, and two brothers. Allegedly, Daniel's father was responsible for the majority of the abuse of him. His family's home, including the plot it was on, was a massive old junk and old cars, the epitome of it uncared for and unkempt. He attended North Middlesex High School, where he was described by other kids and staff as a loner and not particularly friendly. Some of his classmates described him as creepy and weird, while others described him as antisocial and violent. By the 1980s, a neighbor had noticed and grown worried about Daniel's constant trips into the woods behind his house. The Boston Globe newspaper reported the neighbor saying, quote, "You'd see him walk out there by himself. That's the only place you would see him, the woods." He was diagnosed with ADHD by the same psychiatrist who allegedly was sexually abusing him. Daniel became the local neighborhood thief by the age of 15. He broke into local homes during the evening, stealing the owner's valuables, and when that was no longer a thrill, he moved on to mind games. He not only began leaving things behind, but would also move items in his neighbors' homes to scare them or think they were going crazy. Other times, he would move items around in such a way that made it obvious someone had entered their property, but not so much so that it was immediately obvious. In 1986, his mind games turned to creating intense fear when he became obsessed with 15-year-old Tina Bowen. Daniel set in motion a series of events that he would be forever remembered for. Somehow he had gotten the phone number of the family's address in the local area. So let's go back to 1986. Getting somebody's phone number wasn't always easy. You had to go to the phone book back then, and sometimes people did not list themselves in the phone book.
You paid a little extra to be unlisted.
Yes, you did pay a little extra to be unlisted because some people didn't want to be tracked. Some people didn't want their kids to be able to be found, so they were unlisted. So somehow he'd gotten their address. The house belonged to a family of three: the father, Frank, and his two daughters, 15-year-old Tina and 9-year-old Karen, and they had begun talking to Daniel regularly on the phone. On the first call, he told them that a friend who went to the same school as them had given their number to him, that he was a good-looking, athletic, blonde, well-educated boy who also lived in the area and was looking for friends. Tina and Daniel got closer and closer after several phone calls and finally arranged to go out on a date one evening. Daniel arrived on the Bowen's doorstep, and Tina was shocked to see that the boy she had been chatting to was the complete opposite of who he said he was. Instead of the athletic, quote, all-American jock type she had been expecting, Her blind date was a disheveled, greasy, dark-haired boy, in her opinion, within her opinion, zero attractive features whatsoever. However, she was not heartless, so she let Daniel take her to the local fair. After just an hour together, though, Tina made her excuses and went back home. She said it was during their date that Daniel had found out information he would later use in his future terrorization of the family. Tina and Karen had recently lost their mother to cancer, leaving only their dad as their sole caregiver. One of the reasons Tina made excuses to leave the date early was when Daniel found out about her mother. He took far too much interest in the details of her mother's death, and it was a lot more than regular curiosity. Tina would later say it seemed like Daniel was obsessed with the death of her mom, continually questioning her on how she felt at the moment she died and how much her mother had suffered.
Huh.
Tina didn't willingly see Daniel following their date. However, as if written straight out of the scene of a horror movie, she would later find herself back in his company. One night, Tina and Karen, out of complete teenage naivety and likely grief too, attempted to contact their dead mother from beyond the grave by performing a seance in their basement. They weren't expecting anything to come of it, but in that moment, nothing did happen. However, that same evening, Karen and Tina heard a rhythmic knocking against their bedroom walls as they slept. So they were shocked, thinking their seance had worked. But in the dead of the night, the two girls, as they huddled together, began communicating with the unseen spirit force as though they were talking to their mom once more. They asked the spirit questions, to which it replied with more knocks against the wall. The girls were excited that they had unlocked a supernatural window to their mom, and this ritual carried on for the next few nights until the knocking became so regular it stopped the girls from sleeping altogether. Over time, objects in the house would begin to disappear. Items that one day were laid out on a table, next day would be strewn across the floor. The girls would come home from school to find furniture moved from one side of the room to the other. TV channels changed. Back then, you turned it to a TV station. That's what it was on when you turned it on.
Yep.
Items rearranged and milk mysteriously consumed. Full bottles of alcohol would suddenly reappear completely empty. Eventually, Karen and Tina believed they were being haunted by an evil spirit, not the spirit of their mom, as they had originally believed. So, what about Dad? The girls had obviously told him about the odd happenings, but he believed it was the girls themselves who were causing the havoc within the house. The girls told him they believed they had unknowingly allowed a ghost looking for revenge into their home, but Frank didn't believe it and instead told the girls they were being absurd. He reminded them that grief can make you act crazy and to give themselves time to heal. For a while, the knocking stopped. However, one evening in January 87, the strange knocking started once again. Karen and Tina were alone in the front room, the constant tapping going nonstop, driving them both insane. This night, though, the noises didn't sound like they were coming from the walls, but instead of from the basement. So they grabbed a kitchen knife and warily made their way down towards the source of the noise. Had they never seen a horror movie? This was
Yeah, don't
1987,
go
for
down the
God's sake.
stairs. Yeah.
Well, they went down the basement stairs, but they saw something that would haunt them forever. Written in what looked like blood on the basement wall was the message, "I'm in your room, come and find me." At this point, the girls were smart enough. They ran out of the house without hesitation and ran to their neighbor's home. There, they waited for their dad to get home and told him what they had discovered. Frank again believed that it was his daughters who were responsible for the writing on the basement walls, deciding that Tina and Karen needed grief counseling. He believed all these stories were being told because they were struggling mentally with the loss of their mom.
Absolutely.
Several weeks later, the knocking started again. This time they were coming from behind Tina's bedroom wall, and when the two girls entered the room to investigate, they found another message, again written what looked like blood on the wall, and it said, "Marry me." The aftermath played out exactly as it had before. They ran to the neighbors. They waited for Frank, and Frank again placing 100% of the blame on the girls. However, that was about to change.
Yeah.
On December 8th, 1986, Frank, the two girls, and a neighbor had all been out together, and when they returned to the Bowen home, they were found that someone had used the toilet and items were out of place. All the radios were blaring in the house, all the lights were on, the TVs were on, all of them, all blaring with sound. And so this time he couldn't blame the girls.
No, because he was with them.
Yes. He searched the house and they found an intruder hiding in the closet. There was a young man with dark spiked hair, a painted face, and was wearing a hairy jacket. Now, reports on the internet was that he was wearing a dress belonging to their deceased mom, but an article written in the Celtic Sentinel by police officers who responded to the scene said that simply wasn't true. He had a hatchet in one hand and a steel wrench in the other. Frank testified that the intruder ordered all four into a bedroom in a very calm manner. Thankfully, though, Tina was able to escape from the room and run next door, where she frantically called police. At this time, the police department was made up of about 10 officers for the roughly 10,000 residents, where the most common calls were domestic disturbances or public intoxication. The intruder was Daniel LaPlante. However, no one would know that just yet because, interestingly, the Bowen family didn't identify Daniel when the police arrived. He was long gone, so when asked to describe the intruder, it was clear they didn't recognize him as Daniel, likely due to the face paint. Frank described him as approximately 22 years old, while Daniel was only 16 at the time. And in her statement, Tina described him as being 6 feet tall and somewhere between 17 and 26 years old, but Daniel was actually only 5'8".
How come she went out on a date with him?
But face paint. He was wearing face paint. She didn't recognize him.
Okay.
It didn't take police long to realize the messages were not in blood, but actually ketchup. So their next job was try to figure out how the intruder got. I'm sorry, say that one more time.
He didn't even make stage blood. It's easy. He used ketchup.
Yeah, he used ketchup. So next they had to try to figure out how he'd gotten into the house in the first place, as there was no signs of forced entry. The family understandably were spooked and didn't want to stay in their home a moment longer, so Frank packed them up and checked them into a hotel. On December 10th, 2 days later, the police received another call out to the Bowen residence. Officer Steve Bezinson arrived at the home and was met by Frank, who told him he had returned to the home to gather some more belongings and had seen a face in his front window, the same face of the man who had attempted to take his family hostage 2 days earlier. Sensibly, Frank hadn't gone into the house when he saw the face. Instead, he called the cops. The officer took Frank's keys and quickly carried out a perimeter check looking for footprints in the snow, but there weren't any. Everything was fresh and untouched. His initial instinct was that Frank must have gotten it wrong, and understandably so, likely paranoid about going back into the house. However, the moment the officer walked into the home, he realized Frank was 100% not paranoid. The Celtic Sentinel reported Officer Steve is saying, quote, "When I opened the door on the right-hand wall, I saw a knife sticking out of the wall, and I see it through a picture, a family picture, written on it in marker, 'I'm still here, come find me.' Now the hair goes up on the back of my head. On another wall, I saw another picture saying, 'I'm going to kill you all,' with a knife through it." The officer called for backup, and 2 more officers soon arrived, and they began to search the house, but they didn't find anything, but they weren't giving up. Officer Steve Bezinson relayed to the newspaper the moment it had occurred to him to check the walls. He said, quote, "Oh, that's a wall to hide pipes. I'm thinking, son of a bitch, there's enough room back there. I have one hand on the butt of my pistol. I saw what looked like a pile of clothes. He was totally covered with the clothes. I said, that's him. I pulled my pistol and said, I got the son of a bitch right here, but he didn't move. I told him, let me see your hands or I'll splatter your brains all over that wall. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Officer Dave Young run out of the room. He left. This is when I saw Daniel was really bad. He was not afraid. He looked out of the corner of his eye. He wasn't afraid to have a gun stuck to his head." Steve's impression that Daniel was not afraid of having a gun stuck to his head matched with Frank's statement that Daniel had been totally calm and collected when attempting to hold his family hostage. Daniel's hiding place was a triangular space in a corner, bounded on 2 sides by the concrete foundation and an inner wall, and in another wall, and by another wall on the third outfacing side, separating the toilet from the plumbing pipes. The space allowed just enough room for him to sit in a crouch position and even sleep in that mode. He had literally been living in their walls.
Wow. That's how he got in.
Yep.
He got in and stayed.
Yep. So Daniel was arrested, but in a twist, the judge granted him bail. If $10,000 could be raised and paid, he could await his trial as a free boy. His mother agreed to pay, but had to remortgage their home in order to do so, which ended up taking about 10 months. And it wasn't until October 1987 that Daniel walked out of the juvenile detention center on bail, but essentially a free boy. So incidentally, there's been a backlash on about the decision the judge made. If you're not familiar with how a judge determines bail, They go on several questions to decide. Is there a risk of the defendant fleeing, the type of crime the person is alleged committed, the perceived dangerousness of the defendant, and the safety of the community? To me, it seemed pretty obvious Daniel figuratively checked every single one of these boxes, but he was freed. Allowing his
Well, I mean, okay, he he's gonna have hard. He's not an adult yet. He's gonna have a hard time fleeing and staying gone. That I can see. But yeah, he was living in their walls, threatening them, sticking knives in pictures.
yeah,
But you could also argue on the, and again, I hate to be devil's advocate.
I
You
know,
could also argue on the other side. He was there for months and he didn't do anything other than jack with him.
terrorized him. Yeah,
Yeah, but he
yeah.
didn't actually hurt anyone.
No, no, that's true. Following Daniel's arrest, Frank expressed anger that Daniel was released in the first place. He told the Lowell Sun, quote, "If Daniel LaPlante does not get convicted and gets out again, I will personally kill him."
Oh,
As,
wow.
as Frank explained to the paper, he and his daughters lived in perpetual fear of Daniel and had
Mhm.
vacated their home following their encounter with him. He said,
Yeah.
quote, "You can't imagine what kind of fear we've been living in. He is mentally insane. There's no question about it. And now I'm financially broken, emotionally disturbed, and trying to put my life together again."
On top of losing his wife,
Right.
which had just happened. I mean,
Correct.
a couple of years, but yeah.
Correct. So immediately upon his release, Daniel went right back into his life of crime. He started robbing again during one of his robberies in November of '87, just a month after his release. He stole two handguns from a neighbor's house and broke into another home belonging to the Gustafson family. On that break-in, he only stole belongings, but the following month, everything of the Gustafsons would change. Boy, I'm going to stumble over that name.
Gustafson.
On December 1st, 1987, the family had no idea that their lives were about to change forever. They lived about a mile and a half from Daniel's home, and he never strayed far from his own neighborhood when choosing victims to rob. So, for a second time, he broke into their home. However, this time, once inside, he found pregnant nursery school teacher Priscilla Gustafson, age 33, and her young son, William, whom she had just picked up from daycare. Daniel confronted Priscilla with the stolen gun and led her and William to the master bedroom. He placed William inside the built-in closet and tied Priscilla to the bed. He then gagged her with one of his socks and brutally raped her. During the assault, he shot her in the head twice, took William from the closet into the bathroom, and drowned him. As he was coming down the stairs to leave, their other child, 7-year-old Abigail, who had just gotten home on the school bus, walked through the front door. He grabbed her, dragged her into another bathroom, and drowned her as well. Daniel then calmly went home and attended his niece's birthday party. Standard psychopathic behavior.
Yeah. Completely separated it.
Yep.
Wow.
Tragically, it was Priscilla's husband, Andrew, who had discovered the scene. He walked in from work at 5:30 p.m. And he excitedly called out to his wife's name. He had just landed a deal at work and couldn't wait to tell her. However, as he reached the master bedroom, still calling out for her, he was met with the most harrowing sight of his life. He found Priscilla lying face down on their bed, her pillows almost entirely soaked with blood. Immediately he called the police. Andrew was hysterical, telling him he was too scared to call out for the kids because he didn't want to find them harmed.
Yeah, I get that.
So instead, it was the responding officers who found the bodies of the two children, William in the upstairs bathroom and Abigail, who was only 1 week from turning 8 years old, in the downstairs bathroom.
Oh my God.
It didn't matter to police at the time that there was no immediate evidence leaking down to this crime. In their gut, they knew it had to be him. However, when they went and knocked on his door to question him, Daniel was nowhere to be found. You talked about fleeing. He was gone.
Yeah.
This only solidified their theory because nothing says guilt more than running from the cops.
Well, and they have every right to pick him up now because he's not where he's supposed to be.
Correct.
He's out on bond.
Correct. But knowing now that Daniel had a gun, he was classified as armed and dangerous. Police realized they needed to act fast. They set up a manhunt, distributing the only photos they had of him, which were his mugshots from his previous arrest. They set up their perimeter at the entrance of the woods near Daniel's home, which is the same woods from the start of the story.
Mm-hmm.
So he had that unhealthy obsession with visiting the woods. But next,
lived by woods. I spent a lot of time in them too when I was young. Well, all the way up into till my folks moved out of that house. I would go over and just go hang out in the woods for a little bit because I was comfortable out there. That I get.
well, what happened next is even more chilling. Lynn McGovern was going home, and upon her arrival, she felt in her gut something wasn't right. She had been out running errands, and when she pulled in her driveway, she saw police setting up their perimeter. She went to get out of her car, but something stopped her. She said she had an uneasy feeling that washed over her about going into the house. She sat in her car for about 10 minutes trying to shake the feeling. But when a police cruiser pulled up at the end of the drive, she seized the opportunity, jumped out of the car, and asked the officer to do a quick sweep of the house. Thankfully, he did, because this most likely saved her life. The minute they walked in the house, they heard a noise upstairs. The officer drew his weapon, made his way up. He saw Daniel drop his weapon on the landing and jump out the second floor window, fleeing into the woods. The officer immediately radioed for assistance, but it was too late. Too late. Daniel had vanished into thin air, so the manhunt continued and the search area was widened.
Well, and here's the thing. Again, growing up next to some woods, if you don't know those woods, you're not going to find somebody who does.
Right. Well, darkness had fallen, so the police decided to head back to Daniel's home on Elm Street. Really surprising how many criminals will return out of the scene of the crime of their own home. The psychology of that is wild, and I think it's a thrill. I think it's the thrill of seeing the aftermath.
I get to go home, get something to eat, get something to drink, watch all this go, and then I can slip out into the night.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Don't know. It's weird.
Yeah. It really sounds like I'm sympathizing with this kid. I am not.
No.
I'm just trying to understand motivation at this point.
As police pulled up, they heard a woman screaming hysterically. There was a woman named Pam who was the source of the screams, and she was inside her neighbor's Ed's house. She had returned home to 17 Elm Street and found a man with a gun inside, knew immediately it was Daniel LaPlante. At gunpoint, he told her she was going to drive him out of the area. It's almost hilarious if it wasn't so terrifying. He told her that she had to drive him because he only had his learner's permit. However, as they were leaving, Pam's landline rang. Daniel told her to pick it up, which she did. The call was from a relative, warning her to stay vigilant as Daniel was on the loose. She wasn't able to tell the relative he was pointing a gun at her, and she thanked him and hung up. Daniel then had Pam drive out onto Elm Street, where she noticed her neighbor Ed outside. They drove a bit further, and Pam knew it was now or never, so she slammed on the brakes and jumped out of the car. Thankfully, Daniel didn't follow her, but instead he raced away, driving the car himself this time.
Yeah. Well, probably recovering from the nosebleed, because I guarantee it's 1987. They weren't wearing seatbelts.
Probably not.
They didn't make us wear them here until like 1988.
Right. Almost comically, he couldn't have picked a worse getaway vehicle. Pam's vehicle was a bright orange van with a pop top and two huge for sale signs attached.
Yeah. Oh, one of those Mary Milers?
You're right. They put a bolo out to be on the lookout, and the car was spotted. They closed in, but Daniel got out and ran. And knowing he could hide even the smallest of spaces, police checked anything and everything and eventually found him curled up inside a dumpster. So Daniel was arrested for a second time, and thankfully, despite a psychological evaluation revealing he was suffering from a multitude of personality disorders, he was sentenced to 3 life sentences in October of 1988 for the murders of Priscilla, William, and Abigail. He showed no remorse for his actions throughout this trial and sentencing. However, he didn't sit quietly in jail and live out his days behind bars. From 1988 to 2014, he attempted to sue the court multiple times for violations of his rights. In one case, he claimed the prison system violated his religious rights, asserting he was now a practicing Satanist, and he argued that he required sufficient materials to carry out certain satanic rites, but had been denied those by prison officials.
You mean like knives? Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Sacrifices, who knows?
Yeah.
In 2017, it appeared he was finally ready to admit his actions while appealing.
I guarantee you there are Satanists out there going, no fucking way this guy's on our team.
Right. While appealing for a reduced sentence, he made the statement, quote, "Words cannot fully capture what I have done. I murdered 3 innocent people. Because of me, a 5-year-old boy will never turn 6. There's a 7-year-old girl that will never turn 8. Because of me, a woman will never be able to give the birth of her 3rd child. I robbed an unborn child of his first breath. A husband was never able to hear from his family. I love you. I do not hear the words to fully express my profound sorrow, but I am truly sorry for the harm I have caused. From the very essence of who I am, from the depths of my soul, I am sorry. So, you kind of have to judge for yourself. Are these the words of someone who really regrets his actions, or are they just the words of a manipulative, deluded monster who wants to say anything to be released? You kind of have to decide for yourself. I don't know. I don't know.
Hmm.
The court, when reviewing his appeal, did not forget his crimes included 4 separate incidents in 4 different homes, where 9 individuals in total were confronted by an armed maniacal killer. 8 were kidnapped and 3 were murdered. They decided on that basis he didn't deserve to see the light of day for the level of trauma he caused. His appeal was denied, with the judge ordering he could not apply for a parole for a further 45 years, which will take us to 2062, when Daniel will be 91 years old. Safe to say it's probably going to be in jail for the rest of his life.
Yeah. Well, okay. If they let him out at 91,
If he lives that long.
exactly, in prison, people usually don't. And
Right.
if he comes out at 91, he's probably not going to be, I don't want to pick on the old, but able to do anything.
No, you're probably right. You're probably
Yeah, I
right.
mean, you could probably knock him over with a swift breeze.
Chances are he's going to live there the rest of his life, though.
Yeah, more than
You know.
likely, the only way he's coming out of there is feet first,
Yeah.
unless they bury him on the prison grounds.
Right.
And then he never come out.
Sadly, Andrew Gustafsson died in 2014, so he wasn't alive to hear that his family killer had been banished to life in prison for good. Essentially, the judge really means there will be no more parole hearings. On his deathbed, Andrew allegedly claimed, "Don't ever let him out. He should rot in prison." So he probably got his final wish.
Yeah, yeah, that was probably a pretty messed up day for that dude.
Sadly, after these crimes, the lives of Tina, Karen, and Frank were profoundly affected. The trauma of Daniel's invasion, combined with the loss of their mother, left lasting emotional scars on the family. Frank ultimately left his daughters, and although specific details about why is unclear, it's believed Frank struggled significantly with the aftermath of the events. He's reportedly distanced himself from Tina and Karen, and he ultimately died alone at the age of 50.
Oh,
The emotional toll of Daniel's actions effectively tore the Bowen family apart, just as he devastated the lives of the Gustafsson family. The destruction caused by him went beyond physical harm. I mean, he left deep psychological and emotional damage in his wake. Um, and as I said as I told you before we started this, this was a truly, I think, disturbing story, just because of the mind games this kid played on people before he committed his crimes. It was atrocious, and yeah, he deserved to spend the rest of his life in prison. But that's the story of Daniel LaPlante.
well, thank you for that, sir.
Crazy, 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 crazy stuff. So that will take us to the end of another recording week. As always, you can find more information about us on nerderymurdery.com. That's our hub for everything we talk about. You'll find links to what we talked about in this episode, plus pictures from the episode as well. I need to remember to pull a picture that I saw. They have a picture of a drawing of the wall that Daniel was in. I need to I need to pull that picture. But yeah, you can find everything we talk about, more information about us, how to contact us, and you can also find the link to our YouTube page with Zig So Often updates.
Yeah, there's plenty of stuff on Prodigy there, reactions, scenes. I think I've got a full episode as well.
Awesome. I appreciate the work you do on that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
You can also find the link to there we go. I got it out now. You can also find the link to our merchandise page, where if you wish to show off your Nerdery Murdy fandom, please do consider purchasing something from there. That, along with our patrons, you can find the link to our Patreon account. Both our patrons and those who purchase merchandise, it goes to the costs that are associated with this show. There are costs with keeping us on the air and keep going with our uploads, our website, and everything like that. So please do consider donating to that. We do appreciate each and every one of you.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. Last but not least, something you can do for free. Please leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It really helps us and helps others find our content, to find the information we may be talking about. So with that,
I have been Zig with your Nerdery.
and I'm Geoffrey with your Murdery.
Cue the music.
Static crackles, dream state, murdery and murdery fate. Voices in the wire, two dudes light the fire. Obsession and confession, games and death's procession. Through the microphone they speak dark secrets, geeks seek.